Welcome to Emotions and Eating with Nicola Beer. Nicola controlled her feelings using food for 25 years, so she knows how draining it is to be constantly thinking about or acting out with food. Thankfully, having made an amazing breakthrough in her recovery, her mission became about helping others escape the unsatisfying cycle of frustration and self-medication with food. Nicola is determined to help you find your inner strength so you can be healthy, gain confidence, feel great, and be at peace with yourself and food.
Hi and welcome, so happy you're here. I'm going to be talking about regret today, and more importantly, fear of regret and fear of making the wrong decision. I'm sure we can all think about situations that we've been in where we've struggled to make a solid decision because we fear that we may regret it and that the decision will be wrong for us or those around us. This can be especially true with life-changing decisions that inevitably will have a far bigger impact than what to do on the weekend. In my recruitment and career coaching days, right at the start of my career, I coached many families as to whether an expat move would be good for them and their family. Now, many come to me unsure whether they should stay or leave their marriage. Sometimes people come in love with two people and confused on who they should choose. I never, unlike some marriage counsellors out there, would tell a couple what they should do, what decision they should make. Because my belief is, who am I to play God with someone else's life? Instead, I support people to work through their fears, clear resentment, release the past, so that they can see and understand what they need clearly to be happy in their own life, in a relationship, and so that they can make decisions with congruency, in alignment with who they are and what they want, not decisions made out of fear. Now, I want to point out that there's a huge difference between taking time to make an informed decision and putting off making decisions altogether because you fear that you may regret the outcome. In fact, there's even a term, I love all these psychological terms for everything, and they call it decidophobia. Would you believe there's a label for everything? And this is defined as an extreme fear of making the wrong decision to the point where you may even suffer from panic attacks and really extreme anxiety. So, decidophobia. Now, as you know, I quite laugh at labels because I think no one is a label. People are not their behaviour. All behaviour can be changed, and therefore the labels aren't really helpful to put people into boxes. But it did make me smile that there's even a label for this. So I've worked with countless individuals who've decided that they've had enough of not being able to make difficult decisions. And this is where they come to me because they feel paralysed. Paralysed by extreme fear, paralysed by avoiding making decisions. They fear that they're going to regret things. And sometimes this can really lower someone's confidence, their self-esteem, and they can just be stuck in their head, basically. And you're not really living your life if you're stuck in your head and it's a negative experience. Of course, if you want to be stuck in your head and you're having loads of wonderful positive thoughts, great, love it. But for a lot of people, when I mention stuck in the head, they are constantly going back and forth, thinking all the worst case scenarios, and that's for sure going to drain your energy. And you cannot get through life without making decisions. You're never going to evolve if you just rely on other people or do nothing. Because actually, not doing anything is a decision. So some people are making a decision by not doing anything in their relationships, in their career, in their finances. And it's not a very well thought through or informed decision when there's a lot of inaction. So I'm going to share two different areas of life where people have come to me with support in helping to make a decision. First, let me share about Matt. Name change, of course, to protect his identity. He has given me permission to share his story. He came to me because he was questioning his marriage for 7 years. He did not feel the sexual chemistry with his wife. According to him, they lacked fun, passion, and a real connection. It felt since they started a family that they were just going through the motions. He complained to me that everything she did was only centred around the children, and he felt ignored. He also had to follow all of her parenting rules, and he didn't feel he could be the dad that he wanted to be. All she focused on and talked about were the children. Matt felt that her strict regimes made life uncomfortable, and her energy was draining because she complained how tired she was all of the time. Matt started to dread coming home after work. He was greeted with a to-do list rather than any affection and warmth. Sometimes he felt like all his wife saw him as was an ATM machine and a handyman. Matt shared with me that he was confused. He told me that he had an affair with someone else at his office, nothing serious and definitely not someone he wanted to be with long term, but at a work function he would end up going home with her. He did not set out to cheat. It was a drunken conversation about relationships and lack of sex that led him into bed with this other woman from the office. And then it became a monthly occurrence whenever the office went out. Matt was scared to talk to his wife, scared to end his casual fling, as he called it, scared to do anything. So he did nothing. And as time grew on, his thoughts consumed him. I pointed out to Matt that the huge distance in his marriage was his responsibility to take control of, and that when someone complains, like his wife was doing, about being tired or worrying about the children a lot, what she most likely needed was empathy, compassion, positive words, and not avoidance. After he cheated, he admitted that he'd distanced himself further, causing even more damage to the relationship, as then he completely withdrew. He admitted that he barely touched or spoke to his wife. He did feel guilty, and he also felt the relationship was beyond repair. He would go home, play with the children, eat and sleep. And he didn't want to make any decision. He was just brushing it under the carpet because he didn't want to break up his family. And deep down, he knew that his wife was a good person. For years, Matt was consumed and confused, whether to end the relationship and start afresh or not. He was so scared that he might regret it, scared that his children might hate him, scared that he may hate himself, scared that he may be throwing away the love of his life, scared that he wouldn't be loved again by anyone else. So he was even thinking of just moving to a new city, changing job, because he couldn't handle the fear of making the wrong decision. And yet he still kept pushing himself to make a decision every day. So he was putting himself in a trap, telling himself he had to make a decision and then telling himself he couldn't make a decision. And this is why he was so miserable. And he was desperately unhappy for what he describes as over 5 years. When Matt reached out to me, he asked me if I could guide him on what to do. He wanted me to help him make the decisions that he had been obsessively thinking about for years. I advised him that I can't tell him what to do. However, we could look at removing the fears, doubts, and past emotions and increase his confidence in making decisions so that he could then decide what would be best for him. Removing the fear and installing confidence would help him see things more clearly and be able to follow through one way or the other. After the 3-day breakthrough session with me, which is 2.5 hours, 3 days in a row, it became clear that he really did want to give the marriage a chance and put in the effort, that he loved his wife, he did admire and was very grateful for how great she was as a mother. So he decided that he would give it all he had for 1 full calendar year and then see how he felt at the end. He knew that he needed to learn about what he needed in the relationship, what she needed in the relationship, and he needed to stop seeing her as someone as against him and become a team. Day 3 of the 3 days in the breakthrough program, we set out an action plan. He completely ended the fling with the lady in the office and told her that it would never ever happen again. He started on working on rebuilding a connection with his wife. His then wife was so happy that he was being kinder, more positive, more interactive, that she ended up joining the sessions. And she also wanted to make sure that their physical and emotional relationship was much stronger. And clearly what I said earlier about how sometimes not making a decision is making a decision. If Matt was not careful, he would have run his relationship into the ground. Because you can't have a great relationship if you're avoiding someone. So by making a decision one way or the other, it's going to help the relationship. If you decide you're not going to be together, you're far more likely to have a more positive and supportive co-parenting relationship if you have children than letting a relationship just completely die out. Because indecision has consequences as well. And many people will say to me on a weekly basis, oh, I wish I took some action earlier. I wish I reached out to you earlier. I wish I found help earlier. And maybe it's too late. Now, I believe that it's never too late, as long as you can take the right action. And of course, if your partner is willing to give you that chance. Now I'll introduce Laura, whose fear of regret affected an entirely different area of her life. Laura recently contacted me for a block of sessions after searching for an anxiety therapist. She shared with me that she was suffering from anxiety and panic attacks because she was her own worst critic. She stopped herself from progressing professionally because she was always fearful of being unsuccessful, of leaving a stable job that she felt secure in. But the job was making her miserable. However, the security and the fear of regret kept her in a job that made her so unhappy, and she was finding it really hard to function. She was one of the longest running employees at her workplace and never had been promoted. And even when she was recommended to go for higher positions, she would put off making a decision so long that her bosses retracted their interest in her, taking the decision out of her hands. Not only was her fear of regret and decision-making happening at work, it was also happening in other areas of her life. She was stuck in a relationship that she really didn't like. It was not making her happy because she didn't want to go out dating, and she was worried that she might regret it. It was much easier for her to stay in the relationship than to make the decision. Researchers that have studied neural circuits in the brain and looking at the images have identified that the neural connections are very similar when we experience regret to when we are fearful about regretting something. So the experience in the body, the mind and the body and the emotions could be the same. Fear of regret and regret, which is why so many people get stuck with the fear of regret. So I'm going to outline some signs now to see if fear of regret and making decisions is harming you or someone close to you, getting in your way of happiness, of living your best life and reaching your full potential. So it can be in the career place, people that are stuck in dead-end jobs where they miss out on career progression, they're too scared to move positions, they're too scared to ask for a pay rise, they're too scared to move cities, they're too scared to take a risk to join a new firm. It can also be people that talk to themselves negatively. They tell themselves things like, you can't make decisions, you're not very good. They tell themselves, I'm not confident, I'm not intelligent enough, I'm not good enough. It can be people that miss out on trying new experiences, whether that's travel or new opportunities, new activities. They just stay with the familiar and they don't even try any new hobbies or activities or travel. Then it could be people who miss the chance to meet amazing people, both in the romantic sense or in friendships. They say no to invitations. They say no to getting out there. They sit at home. Then it can be where people are scared of increasing their wealth. They know that having the money in the bank may not be the best option because of inflation, and yet they're too scared to take a risk. They look at investment deals, they may be researched, but they don't say yes to anything. And it can also be people that are stuck in relationships with family, romantic relationships, where it's really making them unhappy. It's not bringing them any joy or fulfillment, and yet they're too scared to make a decision. Now, there are some instances where people may be at more risk of